Hello, everybody. So today I want to talk about two cheap Chinese stocks, which according to my screener, to my spreadsheet, are just too cheap to ignore. Of course, Chinese stocks are inexpensive in general. And the first question before investing in any Chinese companies is do you want to invest in China? Do you want Chinese exposure? For some people, for most people, I would argue maybe 2 out of 3, it's a non-starter. It's a no-go. So that's why I expect this video is going to get very few views. But one of the questions when we talk about Chinese stocks, that I would like you to think about is, are really Chinese stocks riskier than U.S. stocks? That's, I think, the better question. Of course, in January, we had 3 gray swans in 1 month, as I call them. So I'm not so sure Chinese stocks are riskier than US stocks. US stocks are quite risky, or even Canadian stocks in the case of Constellation Software. Take the example of United Health. You can see the stock is down 50%, of course, in a year. But if you look at the last drop, it dropped 22% because of a tweet. Well, because of a tweet about a CMS update, right? A single tweet can make your stock drop 20%. Well, that's very similar to, in China, a party official saying something and then the stock drops 30%. In my view, these risks are very much the same for Western stocks right now. If you look at Constellation Software, top Canadian stocks loved by a lot of 10x investors. There's a book about 10 baggers that was really, really big about Constellation Software. Well, it dropped 51% in a matter of 7 months because of the AI narrative. Right, just a simple narrative can make your stock go down 60% in a matter of 50 to 60% in a matter of 6 months, 7 months. So the question is, are U.S. stocks or Western stocks less risky than Chinese stocks? I'm not so sure. I am not so sure. But most people will think that, but not me. I'm not so sure. I just look at the numbers. So let's look at the first Chinese stocks, which I find interesting, which comes up in my spreadsheet as one of the cheapest. And it's XPENG. And the reason why I find XPENGs interesting is, first of all, I kind of have Musk's seal of approval for a lot of Chinese companies. If you listen to Musk talking about the Chinese, Musk has nothing but praise to say about the Chinese and how hard they work and how close they are to him and to Tesla. Nothing but praise. He's got nothing but praise. And if you compare Optimus to Chinese bots, that was some of his latest interviews, say, okay, well, the bots, they're going to be Chinese and there's going to be Optimus. That's essentially what he thinks is going to happen. And of course, whenever China posts something, there is skepticism. And if you go on Western media, Western social media, if you look at X, everybody's saying, oh, the robot is not real. XPeng, of course, is known for its iron humanoid robot. And they'll say, oh, it's not real. It's a woman. It's a real woman. It's an actual woman in there. But if you actually study it a little more, it's kind of crazy how great the walk of this robot is. It feels human. But the way the robot fell in the middle of the demonstration, that demonstration was 2 days ago, the way that robot fell, I mean, it fell nothing like a human. Or if a human fell like that, the human would have died. Because the way she fell, it's like a back-breaking type of fall. So no, it doesn't seem to me like it is a woman at all. And then, of course, there's so much thought about these companies that they actually had to open her up, him or it, excuse me, I'll call it, open it up with scissors on stage to prove, look, there's not a human in there, that's an actual robot. But anyways, it doesn't matter. It's like if you invest in this type of companies, you have to be okay with perpetual FUD. I don't think that FUD is ever going to go away about Chinese companies. But if you're trying to be entirely objective, if you look at, there's a lot of Chinese companies that are extremely successful. One that comes to mind, of course, is DJI. They own the consumer drone business. They literally own it. Dreamy is roughly, excuse me to say, but Dyson is kind of in trouble, right? Dreamy is kind of going to put them out of business. That's kind of my feel. some of the innovation they got in the vacuum cleaner space is just stunning. Shein and Temu, right? Shein, how many clothing stores in Europe, how many clothing brands in the US have died because of Shein? And Temu, in some nations, in some countries, Temu actually competes with Amazon. And that's Pinduoduo. So there's a lot of Chinese companies that are doing really, really good, that are very successful. And I think XPENG definitely could qualify as one of them, or as a Chinese Tesla, or a Tesla copycat. I'm going to call it a Tesla copycat. But they have demonstrated manufacturing capabilities. In fact, I think they only have 5 or 6 cars, but the cars are very popular. They're highly praised by a lot of reviewers in China. The company is founder-led. Look at its name XPENG after the name Xiaopeng, which is his name. So that's why I named it XPENG. I mean, it's dubbed, right? I started watching. They had a 2-hour AI day from late November. I mean, you can see this guy is fascinated with Elon Musk. I mean, just the face. I mean, it's a copycat. Like, they're literally, and of course, copycat may sound bad in the West, but I recommend, like, there's a whole book called AI Superpowers that I recommend about China. There's a lot of books about China. You need to realize that in China, copy is considered flattery. Copy is considered flattering. If you copy somebody, that's the biggest compliment you can give them. This is true of a lot of Chinese culture, and a lot of people don't understand that, but it has to do with the roots of China. It has to do with calligraphy. But if you actually study China, there's a reason why everything in China feels like a copycat, because copying and improving on the copy is actually part of Chinese culture. If you look at the early days of Alibaba versus eBay, for example, and how Alibaba beat eBay at its own game, that was a copy with improvement. What I understand from Chinese culture is copying is not necessarily, at least it's a Western value that is seen as bad. It's not necessarily the case in China. So anyways, it's a tangent here. But I don't think this is a bad thing that they inspire themselves a lot from Elon Musk, because they created a copycat company. And of course, we may never see these products in the US. Like, I don't think XPENG will ever be able to sell any meaningful quantities of humanoid bots in the US. I don't think that at all, for national security reasons. Just like I don't think we'll ever see Chinese cars in the US because of national security reasons. But clearly in Europe, they don't really care too much about welcoming the Chinese. They're all about it. I rode back in France in December. I rode in a BYD Uber. Inside that BYD seal, it felt just like a Tesla. It looked like a Tesla. They had literally copied everything down to the seats. Right, so they are copycats, and the copycats, we don't see them in the US, but the copycats have a lot of success in the rest of the world, and there's no denying that a company like XPENG actually has manufacturing capabilities, and they could be next in line to ramp an actual bot, and that's what they talk about. I asked AI to summarize their AI day in November. If you look at it, they have their next generation computer self-driving, like self-driving with their own chips and Turing chips, and they do self-driving. They're launching a robotaxi exactly like Tesla, so they copy Tesla. They're launching a robotaxi. They are launching second generation vision language action large model, which is very similar to Tesla's FSD. Then they have a next-gen iron humanoid bot, which frankly, if you look, is very advanced and very impressive, and they plan on manufacturing it, just like Tesla with Optimus. And XPENG actually has another bonus, which is their AV ride. And if you look at, and they have 2 of them, they have a drone for short distance, and they have this eVTOL, which is more for medium distance, and it looks uncanny how close it is to Archer's model. right? It's pretty close, and they already have a factory ready manufacturing these eVTOLs. So the eVTOL business is something they did not copy for Tesla. Now, I think Tesla is going to get, this is one of my hot takes a little bit, I think Tesla is going to get into eVTOLs at some point. Elon Musk already said that the Roadster, the April demo, the Roadster would fly. So I think at some point Tesla will have to get into the eVTOL business. That's just my take. But you can see from that they're even further ahead. And if you look at the numbers, if you were to just forget about everything and just look at the numbers, you can see this company's revenue actually has been going through an inflection point. This is the latest report. The latest 3 quarters, their revenue growth is near 100% over the latest 3 quarters. And if you look at their shares outstanding, actually, okay, so they had issued about 10% a year and a half ago, growth in shares outstanding, but actually it's been flat the past 3 quarters. We've only been growing at less than 1% shares outstanding, so there is not a lot of dilution in this company anymore. If I look at the price of the company, note how I'm being pessimistic. I only put 55% forward revenue growth. The data suggests they've been growing at 90+% revenue growth for the past 3 quarters, so maybe I'm maybe way off here. But if I look at EBITDA margin, the inflection point is coming up. They might turn into profitability very soon. And if I look at rule of 40, I'm at a 52, so I'm already there. And if I look at EV over GP over RG, I'm at a 0.17, which is very, very cheap. Because if this company is a copycat, one area where XPENG is not a copycat at all of Tesla is the valuation. There's zero copycat of the valuation. The valuation is dirt cheap. So XPENG might warrant a little more analysis. And let me know what you think about this one in the comments section. Moving on to another Chinese stock, which I find very interesting as well. Now, of course, most people in the US will dismiss Luckin Coffee because of an accounting scandal that they had a few years back. Now, the CEO went away. They did a lot of changes to fix that issue. They got, I guess they got yelled at. I'm going to say, I didn't really, that doesn't passionate me, these issues, so I don't really follow it too much. But I think they got like a little more of a tap on the wrist from the Chinese government for doing that, because it gave a really, really bad rap to Chinese stocks. It was a big scandal back then. I think that they emerged okay from that accounting scandal, and I think they'll make sure it doesn't happen again. But if you look objectively at Luckin Coffee, a lot of the reason as to why Starbucks has known nothing but pain over the past few years is because a Chinese coffee brand, Luckin, has really hurt them in China. Starbucks used to count on China to be its next avenue for growth. And the Chinese coffee brand, Luckin Coffee, has entirely disrupted their business model by, incorporating a lot of Chinese characteristics. So, of course, coffee is a great business because people are addicted to caffeine, and if you start having caffeine, it's not like you can stop having caffeine. So that's the physical, the biological drive behind the business. And Starbucks introduced the Chinese to caffeine. Chinese were used mostly to tea, which is much lower in caffeine. So now you have China, of course, who has a coffee addiction like the rest of the world. But now what's happening is they mixed that coffee addiction with an app. And that's, I think, Luckin's genius, which is why I could call it the Temu of coffee. So if you walk into the store, you would feel like the coffee is nearly as expensive as a Starbucks. It feels premium, it feels nice, but in reality, on the back end, nobody pays full price for coffee at Temu. No one, because you buy coffee at Temu through an app, and the app is full of gamification. So the app just keeps you coming back. First of all, you download the app, it's 99 cents for your first drink. Then the app is full of sales, 70% off, 60% off. Then you can play games like the Wheel of Luck, and you may get a free cookie, a free item. They send you push notifications on your phone where you get different sorts of coupons for different types of drinks. They gamify everything. They have streaks, like a 7-day streak, a 14-day streak, a 30-day streak. Every time you get perks. So they mix the physiological addiction of coffee, the caffeine that keeps you coming back, with the psychological addiction of an app like Temu, which makes the product very, 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 very sticky. And you know what? Not only, I think there's something like 3 times as many Luckin Coffees as Starbucks as there are in China. But Luckin Coffee is after, of course, all of Southeast Asia. It's going after the East. And now it's going after the US because they opened a store in New York City. So if you live in New York City, I mean, next time I go to New York City, I'll be sure to try it out. I will be sure to try Luckin Coffee because I think they are an actual threat to Starbucks. But of course, the most important thing about Luckin Coffee is how cheap they are. It's a 0.068 on my EV over GP over RG. The rule of 40 is a 49. They are growing at 34% next 12-month revenue growth, trading at 9 times EBITDA. Trailing 12 months, trailing 9 times EBITDA, trailing 12 months. So probably forward EBITDA, they're probably trading at a 7 forward EBITDA. Like, this is a company that is so dirt cheap. I have to screen hundreds of companies in the United States to find a company this cheap. Hundreds. I don't understand why this is so. I mean, I understand why this is so cheap. You have accounting scandal that's in the past, and you have China bad. So China bad, accounting scandal bad, people can't change equals cheap stock, right? SMCI is kind of in a glut as well as the price, for example. Supermicro, different stock, but same. They had a little issue of accounting, and just U.S. investors dismiss, they entirely forget about the fact that a company can change. Like, a company can make a mistake and they can change. But in the US, oftentimes, there's this TradFi view that if you have an accounting scandal once, you will always keep having it. And I think it may keep people away from opportunities. I find Luckin Coffee to be very interesting, and the mix of the 2x the addiction, physiological, plus the app, I think it's interesting, and they end up being the low-cost provider of coffee in China without the low-cost feel. So people don't feel like they're having a low-cost coffee, but they're actually having a low-cost price because nobody pays full price at Luckin. So clever business model, if you ask me. So I like these 2 stocks. I find them interesting. And I hope you can tell me what you think about these 2 in the comment section. But I find that interesting. Of course, I'm not taking action on any of these right now. I don't own these stocks, but I find them quite interesting. So this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.